In 1923, a 12-year-old boy in Pittsburgh could clear $3 in a single Saturday afternoon, more than his father earned in 2 days at the steel mill. He had no diploma, no training, no special skill at all. He just knew where to stand, what to shout, and how to hustle. Across America, ordinary men, women, and children scraped together a living from work that required nothing more than willingness and a strong back. These were the forgotten jobs of a different era. Number 2 on this list sent mountain families hunting a 4-pronged plant that paid more per pound than beef. And number 1 built an entire American industry from the bottom of a muddy river, one most people today have never heard of. These 20 forgotten hustles built the working-class America. We forgot. Hit subscribe before we begin, because what your great-grandparents did to survive will surprise you. Let us count down. Number 20. Pinboys crouched in the shadows behind every American bowling alley, dodging flying wood and resetting pins by hand for nickels and dimes. From the 19-teens through the 1950s, the work belonged almost entirely to boys between 10 and 16, who climbed onto narrow ledges above the lanes and waited for the crash. When the pins flew, they jumped down, scooped them up 2 at a time, and slotted them back into wooden racks before the next bowler stepped up. By 1948, a pinboy in Cleveland could clear 2 cents a frame, sometimes 3 cents on league night, working 2 lanes at once until midnight. Loose pins broke noses and split shins, and the smell of stale beer and sawdust clung to a boy's coat for days. Yet for kids whose families needed every dollar, the alley meant opportunity. Then came the AMF automatic pin setter in 1956. Within a decade, the Pinboys were gone, replaced by chrome machines that never asked for a tip. A whole generation of small wages vanished in a single mechanical heartbeat. Number 19. Shoe shine boys claimed every busy corner from Boston to Birmingham, their wooden boxes thrown open like flags planted on conquered ground. A boy with a brush, a tin of paste wax, and a soft cotton rag could pull in 50 cents an hour by 1939, more than most men made in a factory shift. The work was simple in description and brutal in practice. Squat low, scrub off the day's dust, slap on the polish, and snap the cloth taut until the leather glowed like glass. The best shiners learned to make the rag pop, a sharp percussive crack that drew customers like a barker at a fair. By 1942, the shoe shine trade in New York City employed more than 14,000 boys, many of them sons of recent immigrants. They knew which corners belonged to whom, which cops would chase them off, and which businessmen tipped 25 cents without flinching. Cheap synthetic leather, sneakers, and casual workplaces ended the trade. The boxes that once lined every train station vanished into attics. The brushes stiffened with dried polish, and a small economy of dignity quietly closed. Number 18. Movie ushers. In red blazers and brass button jackets stood at attention in every neighborhood theater from the silent era through the 1960s. The job required nothing more than a flashlight, a clean shirt, and the ability to walk down a darkened aisle without tripping. By 1947, an usher at the Lowe's State in St. Louis earned 85 cents an hour, plus tips for showing latecomers to their seats and shushing rowdy children with a dramatic finger to the lips. Teenagers fought for the position. It paid better than soda counters, came with free admission to every show, and let a boy in a uniform feel important for the first time in his life. Theater chains issued strict rulebooks, posture, polished shoes, the proper angle of the flashlight beam, all of it was scripted down to the smile. Then the multiplex arrived. Self-seating became the norm by the mid-70s. The brass buttons came off, the blazers went into storage, and the small ceremony of being shown to your seat under a dim red beam disappeared with them. Number 17. Elevator operators ran the brass and walnut cars that carried America up into its new skylines from the 1880s through the 1960s. The job demanded no education, just steady hands and a calm voice. The operator stood at a polished crank, calling out floors as the cab rose, cushioning the stop with a practiced touch so the gate aligned with the landing. By 1948, 57,000 Americans worked as elevator operators, most of them women during the war, and black men in the years that followed. Pay ran from 40 to 60 cents an hour, supplemented by tips at hotels and department stores. They knew every regular by name, every floor by heart, and every secret about who was meeting whom on which level. Push-button automatic elevators, perfected by Otis in 1950, ended the profession in less than 15 years. The brass cranks were torn out. The little stools went to scrap. The voices that once announced ladies' wear, fifth floor, fell silent across America forever. Number 16. Soda jerks worked the marble counters of every drugstore in the country, mixing phosphates and egg creams with a flourish that turned ordinary syrup into theater. The job required no training beyond a half-day apprenticeship and a willingness to memorize a dictionary of slang. A black and white meant chocolate ice cream with chocolate syrup. A burn one took it down meant a chocolate malt to go. By 1939, soda jerks at Walgreens earned 23 cents an hour, and most of them were teenagers fresh out of high school. The trick was speed. A good jerk could pull a Coca-Cola, build a banana split, and deliver a tuna sandwich in under 3 minutes flat. Behind that counter, a kid learned to handle money, charm strangers, and read a crowd. Then fountain cokes lost ground to bottled soda. Drugstores stopped serving food. Walgreens shuttered the last of its lunch counters in 1968. The marble slabs were ripped out, sold for kitchen islands, and the jerks themselves became a vocabulary the country forgot. Number 15. Western Union messenger boys peddled bicycles through every American downtown for nearly 100 years, hand-delivering telegrams that carried news of births, deaths, and signed contracts. The boys, usually 12 to 17, wore Navy uniforms with brass buttons and pillbox caps stamped with the company's eagle. By 1944, Western Union employed more than 23,000 messengers nationwide, paying a base wage of $8 a week, plus a nickel per delivery. Tips made the job worthwhile. A businessman might slip a quarter for a routine wire, and a soldier's mother might press $1 into the hand of a boy who could read good news as easily as bad. They carried 2 satchels, one for outgoing replies, one for the cream-colored envelopes themselves. They learned every alley, every back stair, every doorman in town. Long-distance telephones, then the fax machine, then email collapsed the entire trade. By 2006, Western Union sent its final telegram. The bicycles, the brass buttons, and the pillbox caps had already been gone for decades. Number 14. Newsboys hollered the day's headlines on every busy street in America. And for a century, the corner belonged to whoever had the loudest voice and the sharpest elbows. A boy could buy a stack of papers from a circulation truck at half a cent each before dawn, then sell them on the sidewalk for a penny apiece, pocketing the difference if he moved fast enough. By 1899, the New York World and the Journal had armies of newsboys, some as young as 7, working 16-hour days and sleeping in tenement basements. Earnings ran around 30 cents a day, enough to feed a brother or pay a mother's rent. The famous Newsboys strike of 1899 forced the publishers to buy back unsold copies. But the work remained brutal. Boys learned to read upside down so they could yell the headlines while still folding stacks. They knew which conductors let them ride free between stops. Television news in the 1950s, then home delivery routes. Then the internet emptied the corners. The cry of extra, extra, faded into a sound effect from old films. Number 13. Lamplighters walked the streets of every American city at dusk and dawn, carrying long brass-tipped poles that lit and snuffed the gas lamps one by one. Boston employed more than 220 Lamplighters in 1894. Each paid $18 a month to cover a route of roughly 40 lamps. The job required no skill, only stamina. Up the ladder, a turn of the key, a touch of the wick to the pilot, then on to the next pole before the gloom thickened. By the 1900s, electric arc lamps began to replace the gas ones. By 1927, only a handful of cities still had lamplighters, and most of those were retained for charm or tradition. Boston extinguished its last gas-lit beat in 1981. The poles went into museums. The brass keys clinked into desk drawers and were forgotten. Yet for nearly a century, this was honest evening work for men who needed nothing but legs and the willingness to walk a circuit twice a day, lighting the streets that wealthier men hurried home along. Number 12. Bottle deposit hunting turned the alleys and roadsides of America into a paying field for any kid willing to bend over. From the 1930s onward, glass soda and beer bottles carried a deposit, 2 cents on a small bottle, a nickel on a quart, sometimes a dime by the 1970s. Boys and girls dragged burlap sacks behind them after baseball games, county fairs, and 4th of July picnics, scouring grass and parking lots for the green and brown glass that meant pocket money. By 1962, the National Soft Drink Association estimated that children returned more than 4 billion bottles a year, redeeming them at corner stores and supermarkets for cash. A determined kid could clear $3 or $4 on a Saturday morning, enough for movie tickets, candy, and a comic book with change to spare. The arrival of disposable aluminum cans in the 1960s and the eventual phase-out of returnable glass in most states ended the hustle for most of the country. The burlap sacks went under the porch. The corner stores stopped paying out. The little economy of stooping for nickels closed. Number 11. Worm picking. Worm picking under flashlight beams supplied every bait shop in America with the night crawlers fishermen needed by dawn. From the 1940s through the 1970s, men, women, and children crawled across damp lawns and golf course fairways after rainstorms, plucking the long pink worms from the grass and dropping them into coffee cans. The trick was speed and a soft hand. A worm yanked too hard would snap, and a snapped worm was worth nothing. By 1958, the going rate paid by tackle shops was 10 cents per dozen, and a skilled picker working a Michigan golf course at midnight could fill 3 coffee cans, around 600 worms, in 2 hours. They wore knee pads or burlap sacks tied around their legs, and they all knew the same secret: walk softly. Worms feel footsteps and disappear back into their holes in an instant. Commercial worm farms and refrigerated bait packs ended the cottage trade by the 1980s. The flashlight crews vanished from the lawns, but for 40 years a pair of damp knees and a coffee can paid more than minimum wage to anyone willing to work in the dark. Number 10. Caddies carried golf bags up and down the manicured fairways of every American country club, earning more in a single afternoon than most paper boys earned in a week. From the 1920s onward, caddying was almost entirely the province of teenage boys who learned to read greens, club, a yardage, and hold their tongues all in the same summer. By 1953, a caddy at Winged Foot in New York could pull in $7 for an 18-hole round, plus a tip that often doubled the take. Sons of plumbers and bus drivers met the kind of men who ran banks and law firms, and a sharp-eyed kid could parlay good service into a college scholarship through programs like the Evans Scholars Foundation, founded in 1930. The job demanded no formal training, only stamina, etiquette, and the willingness to tell a stockbroker his slice was a closed club face without sounding rude. Then came the gas-powered cart in 1962. Within 20 years, caddy programs had collapsed at all but the most exclusive clubs. The wooden bag stands rotted, and the apprenticeship and adult conversation that caddying provided disappeared along with it. Number 9. Coal scavenging. Along the railroad tracks fed thousands of working-class American families through every winter from the 1880s to the late 1940s. When loaded coal cars rumbled past slum neighborhoods, lumps would jolt loose and tumble down the embankments. Children, sometimes whole families, walked the gravel beds with burlap sacks, picking up the spilled fuel and carrying it home for the stove. In the company towns of West Virginia and the rail yards of Chicago and Pittsburgh, this was not theft. It was understood, sometimes tolerated, sometimes punished, but always happening. By 1933, more than 400,000 American households heated with scavenged coal during the depths of the Depression. A child could fill a flour sack in 2 hours and walk home with 20 pounds of free heat, the equivalent of 50 cents in store-bought fuel. Oil and gas furnaces, then better-sealed coal cars, ended the practice. The embankments emptied of children, the burlap sacks rotted in basements, and one of America's quietest survival hustles slipped out of memory like the smoke from a Saturday stove. Number 8. Rag and bone collectors, called scrapmen or junkmen in most American cities, drove horse-drawn carts and later beat-up trucks through every neighborhood, calling out the same long syllables their grandfathers had used. Any rag, any bone, any iron. They paid pennies for old clothes, soup bones, busted pots, broken bicycles, anything that could be melted, rendered, or resold. By 1939, the U.S. Census of Manufacturers listed more than 30,000 rag and scrap dealers nationwide, most of them sole operators. A man with a horse, a cart, and a strong back could net $30 a week, twice a factory wage, by buying low door-to-door and selling by weight to the wholesalers down by the rail yards. Children learned to recognize his bell, his whistle, his particular shout. Wartime metal drives in 1942 and 1943 organized the trade into a patriotic ritual. Then came municipal trash pickup, scheduled bulk collection, and the disposable culture of the 1960s. The horse carts vanished. The shouts faded from the alleys. The rag and bone man became a phrase in nursery rhymes, and nothing more. Number 7. Ice harvesting on New England ponds turned every cold January into a paying season for thousands of farmers, fishermen, and casual laborers. From the 1820s through the 1920s, men sawed 2-foot-thick blocks out of frozen lakes from Maine to Wisconsin, dragging them up wooden chutes to insulated ice houses where they would last until July. By 1880, the Hudson River alone supplied 2 million tons of harvested ice a year to New York City. Workers earned $1.50 a day, paid in cash, plus all the coffee they could drink to fight the cold. The work demanded only a sharp saw, ice tongs, and a willingness to slip into freezing water at the wrong step. Whole towns shut down their other businesses for the harvest, knowing the season ran 6 weeks at most. Refrigerators, manufactured ice plants, and finally the home freezer killed the trade by the 1930s. The wooden chutes rotted, the ice houses collapsed, and the photographs in town historical societies became the only proof that a frozen pond once paid better than a factory shift. Number 6. Piecework garment sewing turned millions of American kitchens and parlors into miniature factories from the 1880s through the 1960s. A woman with a treadle singer machine could sign on with a contractor, take home a bundle of pre-cut shirt collars, sleeves, or buttonholes, and sew piecework for a fraction of a cent per finished unit. By 1909, more than 500,000 American women worked piecework from home, mostly in the tenements of New York, Chicago, and Philadelphia. A skilled seamstress could finish 300 shirt collars in a 12-hour day, earning roughly $2.80, paid by a runner who walked the bundles back and forth. Children sat alongside, snipping threads and turning collars right side out. The work required no training beyond what a mother had taught her daughters since girlhood. federal labor laws in 1938, then the post-war movement of garment factories abroad ended American piecework almost entirely by 1970. The Singer machines were sold or shoved into closets. The bundles stopped arriving on the back stairs. The hidden labor that clothed America passed quietly into history. Number 5. Avon. Ladies and Fuller Brush men knocked on every door in suburban America for the better part of the 20th century, peddling cosmetics, mops, hairbrushes, and small dreams of a better organized home. Anyone could sign up. The companies handed over a sample case, a price book, and a territory map, and that was the entire training program. By 1962, Avon employed more than 350,000 independent representatives, most of them women, earning 40% commission on every lipstick, jar of cold cream, or bottle of perfume they sold. Fuller Brush had built itself on the same model since 1906, sending more than 30,000 men in pressed suits up driveways with a free vegetable scrubber and a foot in the door. A determined Avon lady working her own block could clear $60 a week in 1955, all of it in cash, none of it requiring a husband's signature. Then came shopping malls, big box stores, online ordering. The doorbells stopped ringing, the little brown sample cases were retired. A whole tier of independent women's income, built on nothing but conversation and persistence, quietly closed. Number 4. Boarding housekeepers ran the unlicensed hotels of working-class America for over a century, renting out spare rooms and cooking communal meals for traveling salesmen, factory workers, and unmarried clerks. By 1900, the U.S. Census recorded that nearly 1 in 5 urban households took in at least one boarder. The keeper, almost always a widow, a wife with an absent husband, or an aunt with a spare bedroom, charged $5 to $12 a week for a bed and 3 meals, depending on the city. The work required no skill beyond what a competent housewife already had. Cook breakfast for 8, pack a lunch pail by 7, simmer a stew for supper, change the sheets on Saturday. A widow in Brooklyn in 1924 with 3 boarders cleared roughly $35 a week net, more than her late husband had earned at the warehouse. Apartment buildings, motels, and the post-war dream of the single-family home dismantled the trade by the 1960s. The boarding house, that institution that had quietly housed and fed half of urban America, faded into a memory of porches and shared bathrooms. Number 3. EGG money was the secret economy that powered farm families across America from the Civil War through the 1950s, and it belonged almost entirely to women. While the man of the house tended the cash crops, his wife tended the chickens. The eggs she sold to the rolling huckster wagon, the country store, or directly to townspeople were her own to spend, no questions asked. By 1939, the average farm flock produced about 120 dozen surplus eggs a year, worth roughly $30, the equivalent of $900 today, in a household where the total cash income might be only $1,200. Wives used egg money to buy school clothes, pay the doctor, send a son to high school, or, in the famous phrase, keep something back for hard times. The hens were tended before dawn, fed table scraps, and protected from foxes and weasels by women who counted every laying body as a small business. Industrial poultry farms in the 1950s, with cage house operations producing eggs at a fraction of the cost, ended the trade. Backyard flocks dwindled. The income that had quietly funded a generation of educations and emergencies disappeared into the accounting books of corporations. Number 2. Ginseng. Digging in the hardwood hollows of Appalachia paid mountain families through every lean season for over 2 centuries. It remains one of the most distinctively American hustles ever practiced. From the 1700s onward, men, women, and children walked the slopes of West Virginia, Kentucky, and North Carolina with a hoe and a burlap sack, hunting the 4-pronged plant called sang. The roots, dried and shipped to Chinese buyers in Hong Kong and San Francisco, fetched extraordinary prices for plants pulled from the dirt by people in patched overalls. By 1908, American wild ginseng exports topped $500,000 a year. By 1979, dried wild ginseng was selling for nearly $200 a pound. A skilled sang digger working a known patch could clear $800 in a season, paid in cash. No questions asked by buyers who set up scales in country stores every September. Habitat loss, over-harvesting, and stricter regulations have shrunk the trade. Yet the practice continues in pockets of Appalachia, the last living thread of a hidden American economy that paid the doctor's bill, the property tax, and the school tuition with the patience of bent backs and quiet feet through 100 autumns of falling leaves. Number 1. Pearl button mussel diving on the Mississippi River and its tributaries built an entire American industry that almost no one remembers today, and it crowned the working class of a dozen river towns from the 1890s through the 1940s. Divers, pulled muddy and dripping from the water in canvas suits, brought up burlap sacks of freshwater mussels by the boatload. The shells, sorted and sold to button factories in Muscatine, Iowa, were stamped into the buttons that fastened nearly every American shirt and dress for half a century. By 1905, Muscatine alone produced more than a third of the world's buttons, and divers up and down the river earned $3 to $5 a day, twice what a farmhand made. Children sometimes wandered the riverbanks afterward, picking through discarded shells for the rare freshwater pearl that turned up in maybe one mussel in 1,000. A single perfect pearl could pay for a year of school. Plastic buttons in the 1940s, and then the collapse of the mussel beds from overharvest and pollution ended the trade almost overnight. The factories closed, the diving suits rotted, and the entire American Pearl Coast, with its boats, divers, and small fortunes pulled from the river bottom, faded into a footnote no schoolbook bothered to keep. From the Pinboys who dodged flying wood for a nickel a frame to the mussel divers who built the button capital of the world, these forgotten American hustles paid real money to people with no diploma, no license, no special skill, only the willingness to show up and bend down. Tell me in the comments which of these your grandparents did. Whose grandmother kept egg money in a coffee can? Whose grandfather set pins? Because these jobs were not just income, they were the last rungs of a ladder America quietly took apart.